Chairman. Thank you for listening to us. The International Federation for Human Rights, IGH, where I work, is a federation of over 160 human rights NGOs all over the world. In Eastern Europe, Russia has always been one of the priorities for its considerable historical and geopolitical weight in the region and in the world. Since the beginning of the 2000, FIDH started to work closely on Chechnya, a small Russian republic suffering from one of the most outrageous conflicts in the last decades, and a number of FIDH fact-finding missions were undertaken in Chechnya and in the neighboring republics. From 2007 through the first half of 2008, it may have seemed that the peace and stability have been achieved in the Chechen Republic, albeit at the price of the serious violations of human rights that had occurred in preceding years. The rate of armed conflict had undergone a stable decrease, and losses in the security forces have decreased. Human rights advocates reported fewer cases of the illegal use of force on the part of governmental employers. In January 2009, Kadyrov, president of the Chechen Republic, proclaimed that there had been a compelled and final victory over the insurgency and terrorist underground. According to him, there remained only a dozen or so insurgents in hiding. However, starting in late 2008, it became obvious that it was premature to talk of stability having come to the Republic. In the summer of 2009, the greatest losses among the law enforcement personnel occurred in Chechnya, increasing by 150% compared to the previous year. In 2009, a series of terrorist acts were committed in Chechnya, including those using suicide bombers. Losses of military and police personnel decreased significantly compared to the previous year. However, at the end of the summer, the insurgents demonstrated their ability to concentrate relatively powerful forces and deliver telling blows to the opponents. A striking demonstration of this was a nighttime attack in August 2010 on Kadyrov's home village, Tsentroy, which he was visiting at that time. For clear reasons, this village has been considered until very recently to be the safest place in Chechnya. It is important to underline that whatever happens in Chechnya, even controlled tight by President Kadyrov, it is always reflecting the move given from Kremlin in Moscow. For example, in the turn-up of the constitutional referendum in Chechnya, over the course of 2 months, we were unable to document a single instance of abduction. This was after Russian President Putin appealed to the people of Chechnya to vote for the constitution so that nobody would come knocking at their door at night. That was his impression. However, after the referendum, the machinery of violence resumed its work and has yet to cease. Disappearances and torture continued in Chechnya just as before the referendum. In recent years, a significant number of former Chechen insurgents had been accepted in the ranks of the Chechen Republic's Ministry of Internal Affairs and granted amnesty by the authorities. A failure to investigate the abduction, murder, and torture of people in Chechnya has become one of the main factors enabling such crimes. The impunity which members of Russian security agencies have been able to carry them out had become absolute. Not a single prosecutor had been relieved of his post in any district of Chechnya for failing to investigate instances of abduction or murder. Not a single military commandant or head of a district internal affairs branch under whose jurisdiction identified individuals abducted people and then passed unemployed through government checkpoints has been put on trial. Not a single investigator has even suffered disciplinary actions for failing to carry out the most obvious investigative actions in criminal cases. Every single prosecutor serving a term of duty in the Chechen Republic has been promoted and given new assignment within Russian power. Sometimes we hear allegations that the current situation in Chechnya is the fault of the Republic's own government. But under Russian law, prosecutors' investigative divisions and the Republic's Ministry of Internal Affairs do not answer to Ramzan Kadyrov. They are federal structures. Given that human rights organizations, in contradiction of statements by the government, are constantly reporting gross violations of human rights in Chechnya and neighboring republics, the government has taken the simplest path toward resolving the contradiction. It has begun to persecute these human rights activist organizations. On July 15, 2009, our close colleague and friend, leading memorial staff member Natalia Estimirova, was abducted and killed in Grozny. This murder was entirely due to her professional activities. The crime has yet not been solved. On August 11, 2009, in the Grozny office, the head of the organization Let's Save the Generation, Zarema Saidulaeva, and her husband were abducted. Their bodies were found the next day with signs of torture. In July 2010, Kadyrov officially declared employees of Memorial to be enemies of people. Criminal proceedings initiated at Kadyrov's request against Oleg Orlov are currently underway. Oleg Orlov is a Memorial's chairman. However, it is completely obvious that the armed underground in the North Caucasus and terrorism was spawned not by human rights activists, but more likely by the actions of the government itself. To conclude, I would just like to underline that what we call Chechenization, the passing the power in the republic to the Chechen ethnic unities of the conflict, had a notable effect in the campaign against armed resistance during past years. However, it is obvious that today this resource has been exhausted. The authorities of the Republic are not able to keep Ramzan Kadyrov's promise to totally annihilate the underground and the insurgency. Furthermore, the totalitarian regime based on force and fear itself has given rise to new resistance. The Republic government's response to this development was extremely harshly, and it is again humbling of the use of illegal force. My colleagues will give you a more precise picture of the scale of this impunity. FIDH strongly believes that all political and diplomatic and economic opportunities, all the bilateral relations between the United States and Russia should be used as a leverage to put an end to this impunity. President Kadyrov just 10 days ago was appointed for one more 4-year term of presidency in the Republic by President Kadyrov. Therefore, it can be seen as if his way of action satisfies or at least doesn't disturb the Russian government. We deeply believe that human rights are not only part of a problem of terrorism, but it's also part of a solution. And therefore, I would like once again to thank you for being here today with us and to listen to our testimonies. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your excellent testimony. Appreciate it. Ms. Lanskoy?
Thank you. I'm very grateful to the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission for convening this very important hearing. The Commission sheds light on some of the most difficult human rights issues and gives a voice to activists at risk. We at NED have had a long relationship with the Commission and appreciate this opportunity to speak about human rights abuses in the North Caucasus. The National Endowment for Democracy is a private, nonprofit foundation dedicated to the growth and strengthening of democratic institutions around the world. We have a particularly strong program in Chechnya in the North Caucasus, where we support local grassroots organizations in every republic in the region, as well as Russia's largest human rights organizations. In addition, we support our European partners in various efforts at networking and providing support for activists at risk. Unfortunately, over the last 2 years, we've had to make many special arrangements to mitigate the growing dangers involved with this work. The situation became particularly acute in 2009 when 8 activists were killed. One such person was Umar Israilov, who was killed in Vienna. He had a case pending in the European Court for Human Rights against the Chechen president, Ramzan Kadyrov. Umar's father, Ali Israilov, who speaks later on this panel, has shown tremendous courage in continuing to challenge Kadyrov in the courts. Another victim was Natalia Stemirova, a researcher in the Memorial office in Chechnya, who was killed because of her work on human rights. Following that tragedy, the office of Memorial was closed and local staff were temporarily relocated to ensure their safety. They've been able to resume their work recently, but only in a very limited capacity. By working in the most dangerous circumstances, despite tremendous government pressure and great personal risk, these activists maintain a link between the North Caucasus and the outside world and provide reassurance to others that in the end justice will prevail. This reassurance that fairness can be obtained through due process of the law is crucial to stemming the growing tide of extremism in the region. This hearing poses an important question. Are widespread human rights abuses contributing to the spread of the conflict and the radicalization of the population? I think this is clearly the case. I recently published a book called The Chechen Struggle, Independence Won and Lost. It was co-authored with Ilyas Akhmadov. We tell the story of the Chechen quest for independence and traced the fragmentation and radicalization of the resistance and the spread of the conflict to other parts of the North Caucasus. This radicalization did not happen overnight. The most intense period of terrorism came as a result of the Second Chechen War. And according to every available set of data, the insurgency has been spreading geographically and claiming an increasing number of victims since then. Russia has tried many different policies to pacify the region, waging a war, co-opting local elites, engaging in public works projects, manipulating the boundaries of federal districts, replacing governors, and killing extremists. None of this has worked. It's a mistake to see Chechnya and the North Caucasus as a local front in a global war. Most acts of terrorism related to the North Caucasus have obvious domestic causes, grounded in local abuses and grievances, and have no known international links. The centerpiece of Russian counterinsurgency policy in Chechnya is the Chechen president, Ramzan Kadyrov. The Russian federal government has vested Kadyrov with a monopoly on political power. It has contributed substantial budget resources to his government. It has given him leeway to operate with a great deal of independence. Kadyrov and his forces, who are nominally divisions of federal ministries, operate with total impunity, and their tactics include disappearances, torture, and so forth. Kadyrov himself was awarded the Hero of Russia Medal, which is Russia's highest honor reserved for acts of extraordinary courage. There are two important cases in the courts now that compile a great deal of evidence about Kadyrov's wrongdoing. The first is the case in Vienna, in which 3 Chechen refugees are standing trial in the killing of Umar Israilov. The second case is in Moscow, in which Oleg Orlov, the director of Memorial, is on trial for criminal libel for having said that Kadyrov is responsible for the murder of Natasha Estemirova. The cases are ongoing and deserve continued attention. In Vienna, the prosecution contends that Kadyrov and his government maintain a network of agents around the Chechen Cultural Center in Vienna who monitor and control Chechen refugees in the area. The prosecution links Kadyrov to the murder suspects and argues that they were instructed to kidnap Israilov and forcibly return him to Chechnya. According to the prosecution, they shot and killed Israilov because they couldn't manage to abduct him. In Moscow, the criminal libel case against Oleg Orlov has been going on for over a year. The case is extremely important because it represents, in the most pure form, the degree of Kadyrov's impunity. Orlov's defense has entered into the court record numerous instances in which Kadyrov bragged publicly about his participation in other killings, that he has insulted and belittled Estemirova. His personal animosity for her dates back to an incident in 2004 when Kadyrov took a swing at Anna Politkovskaya and Estemirova stood up and stood in his way. Orlov's defense has also cited the fact that Kadyrov's closest associate, Adam Delimkhanov, characterized human rights activists as doing the work of the devil on state television in the days prior to the killing. Another Chechen official warned Natalia's Memorial colleagues that she was in serious danger. Orlov has explained repeatedly that what he seeks is a full investigation into the possibility of Kadyrov's complicity in this murder. Indeed, it seems rather odd that Anna Politkovskaya was murdered, that Umar Israilov was murdered, and that Natalia Estemirova was murdered, and the only person on trial in Russia is Oleg Orlov. I'm going to stop my remarks here, and I'm very grateful to you.
I'm very grateful to you.
This opportunity.
Thank you very much.